Good afternoon, and thank you for listening to WITF.
Welcome to The Spark. I'm your host, Asia Tabb, and today we're traveling back in time and looking forward to the future through the story of a bridge that stood over the Yellow Breeches Creek for more than 135 years. The Sheepford Rd Bridge was built in 1887, and it isn't just a local landmark connecting York and Cumberland counties. It's a rare example of 19th century engineering using phoenix columns, a design that even helped inspire the Eiffel Tower. Joining us to share more about it is Paul Shearer, president of the West Shore Historical Society, and Janice Lynx is executive director, who's also chair of the Friends of Sheepford Rd Bridge. Don and Janice, welcome to The Spark, and thank you both so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Don, let's start with you first. For those of us that may not be familiar, where is the Sheepford Rd Bridge?
It's in Lower Allen Township, Cumberland County.
And what makes it stand out and significant to our region?
Well, it's as Janice will talk more about, I'm sure. It goes back to 1887. It was a major connection between York and Cumberland counties. The construction of the bridge, along with the historical nature, is how we got involved in trying to preserve it.
And Janice, you've been deeply involved in this project for years. When did you personally first connect with that bridge?
So I lived down near the bridge, so it was part of our everyday life. We traveled over it, used it for transportation to get to. It connects York and Cumberland County and Fairview and Lower Allen Township. So right over the bridge, and you're in the other township. So it was our connection. And but in 2019, I was in my driveway and I noticed that there was some commotion going on down there, and I found out that the county and the township were trying to figure out sort of what the turnaround would be because they were expecting the bridge to fail inspection. And I was like, what do you mean it's going to fail inspection? So we're going to fix it, right? And no, the plan at that point was to demolish the bridge. So I got to work.
So what about the bridge made it get to the point where it didn't pass the inspection?
Right. So as everybody says, it's all about the funding. York and Cumberland County own many bridges alone and then 9 bridges together. So at some point they had devised a list of bridges on the A, the B, the C, and the D list. Our bridge wound up on the D list, which meant that it wasn't going to get any funding and they would use it for as long as it did pass inspection. And that was partly because it was on a very low volume road. It doesn't see a lot of traffic, but it didn't really take into consideration the historical value of the bridge.
Tell us about the historical value of the bridge.
So it's historically significant for several reasons. One, it was built by the Phoenix Bridge Company, and they are an important bridge company. The town of Phoenixville in Pennsylvania is basically named after them. And so it has on it what's called Phoenix columns that were patented in, I believe, 1861. And that was a new technology that was used. Instead of using a solid piece of cast iron to hold up the bridge, they used sections of wrought iron. And it made the actual bridge much stronger, less fracture critical, which means it was less likely if something hit a certain part of it that it would collapse. So it was a major improvement in technology, and that is why it's eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, because of those Phoenix columns. It also has its original portals, its original builder's plaques, and there's a certain thing called U-connectors that were original to the bridge. So it was much in original condition. There were some things that were switched out over the years for repairs, stringers, floor beams, but generally speaking, on the whole, it retained all of its historic properties.
I might add that the bridge also there's a replica of it that crosses from Green Lane Farms in Fairview Township and Cedar Cliff in Cumberland County. And it's an identical bridge, except ours, the Sheepford, is a little bit older.
And there's also a connection to the Eiffel Tower.
So the connection, and we keep trying to find more and more confirmation of this, but what we heard is that there was a Centennial Tower that was going to be built, and Gustav Eiffel saw the plans for this tower. It used Phoenix columns, and so he said it was the inspiration for the Eiffel Tower, but in the Eiffel Tower itself, they didn't actually use the Phoenix columns. So we've only seen like secondary sources on this. We continue to do research to find out a little bit more information about it.
And like you said, back in 1887, this bridge was built with something called Phoenix columns, but that also was used in the NYC subway system, Independence Hall, and even the Washington Monument, things that we know today. What does that tell us about the level of innovation and coming out of Pennsylvania in the 1800s?
It says a lot. I mean, not the only, like we said, the Green Lane Farms or Edder's Bridge has the same technology. The Washington Monument has the same technology. But for this little bridge company in Phoenixville to come out with this new technology was a major stepping stone to the future. The type of bridge that the Sheepford Rd Bridge is, it's a Pratt through truss bridge. They're basically built like erector sets. So just as it went up, while it's being rehabbed, it's going to come down, and they'll be able to, when it's repaired, put it back together again because of the technology in those bridges.
And historicbridges.org rates Sheepford a 9 out of 10 for its historical and technological significance, right? Mm-hmm. But PennDOT has listed its preservation priority as exceptional. What does that kind of recognition mean for your work in trying to preserve this bridge? Well,
interesting. When we first started out, we had no idea that the bridge was historical. We were more concerned about losing one of our routes out of our neighborhood. It wasn't until we found out it was threatened and we started to do research that we found out how exceptional it is, according to PennDOT, and they put that in their 2017 preservation study. We had filed right to know papers to try to find out, like, who do you even ask when you find out information like this? Oh, your bridge is going to be demolished. What do you do? So we filed right to know papers with York and Cumberland County, and that's when we found out about the historical significance of it.
And it also has been pre-approved for the National Register. So these type of designations are important. Why? Could you explain why they're important?
Well, for one thing, if you're eligible for or on the National Register, it opens up funding sources for you. We are not on the register yet, but because we are pre-approved for it, we do have access to that funding. And in 2021, we had the bridge added to Cumberland County's Register of Historic Places. And that was a very big day for us down at the bridge.
What was that day like? Take us back to it.
When you start out in a project like this and you're kind of on your own, and then I started it, but I could not have continued if other people hadn't joined in. And that day was a culmination of, at that point, almost only 2 years of work. Right now we're in 6 years. But we had all of our elected representatives came down to the bridge and spoke about it. The media was there. We had about 75 members of the community there. It's a beautiful day. And we finally realized that we had built the coalition that we had been trying to build all that time. That was the first sign that we had actually done it. And it was that coalition that enabled us to go forward and eventually get the funding to save the bridge.
And like you said, it's been part of the landscape for more than a century. You both shared your stories and connection to this bridge. What's the biggest risk if historic structures like this one isn't preserved?
So, Don Paul, do you want to give your quote?
Yeah, history loss cannot be brought back. And once it's gone, it's gone. When you destroy a bridge, demolish it, or a building, it's gone. And then people find out, oh, we didn't realize that's the significance of it. So that's where, and I might add that the West Shore Historical Society, as a compromise, if we hadn't done it, we probably wouldn't have been able to save the bridge. West Shore Historical Society is going to take ownership of the bridge when it is returned. So that was we're not in the bridge business. We're a nonprofit little historical society. But that was an important step.
And that goes into the category of be careful what you wish for. Because there we were hoping we would, this bridge has to be saved. It has to be saved. And then if we hadn't agreed to take on ownership of it, the county was not going to go ahead and put in the grant application that we were ultimately successful in getting. So in order to save it, we stepped up. And it remains to be seen what the future looks like. We're, of course, trying to raise money because we will be responsible for insurance and maintenance long term. So that's our primary goal at this point.
You're listening to The Spark on WITF, and I'm your host, Asia Tabb. We're going to take a short break, but when we return, we'll continue our conversation with Don Paul and Janice Lynx of the Sheepford Rd Bridge. Welcome back to The Spark. I'm your host, Asia Tabb, and we're talking about the history and the future of the Sheepford Rd Bridge, a rare 19th century bridge that once connected York and Cumberland counties. We've been chatting with Don Paul Shearer and Janice Lynx from the West Shore Historical Society, who's been having the conversation with us about this piece of history that they're working to preserve. What keeps you two going on a project like this? Because it is expensive, and you're working as a nonprofit, and you're trying to preserve this bridge and other structures too, but also explaining to everyone, yeah, I know this bridge isn't quote unquote useful right now, but it's important that we remember what it was in its glory days.
Well, I might add that West Shore Historical Society began with two communities, Rhombusburg and Lemoyne. We've now added Lower Allen, Hampton Township, Silver Spring, Fairview, so that we were contacted recently, for example, Peace Church. Hampton Township inquired because PHMC, the Pennsylvania Historic Museum Commission, was talking about selling Peace Church outside of the Friends of Peace Church, who've been operating it for 50 years. And so that, again, we stepped up on that case, in which we did with the bridge, to contribute purely a lot of man hours and woman hours. And in fact, if it weren't for just a few of us, this never would have happened. But it was the coalition that brought it about.
And I think that a lot of people don't know that they have a passion for something until it suddenly becomes personal to them. I'm a retired elementary school music teacher, and I had no, interest or training or anything in preservation. So when it hit me personally with this particular bridge, basically, I and a few others Googled how to start, a grassroots organization and followed the advice that we received and worked up and contacted the world. But it's a passion, and for different people, it's a different property or a different area. But once that passion arises, it takes a lot to dampen it. I mean, the first few years of I call it a battle. It was like a war with this bridge trying to get it saved. And eventually, everyone came together. Everyone's on good terms. But when there's already a plan in motion and you come and try to disrupt that plan, it's difficult. It's difficult.
I remember the day that Janice called me. We had never met, and she asked if the West Shore Historical Society would be interested in assisting in saving the Sheepford Rd Bridge. And I asked, where's it going? And she said, apparently you don't know, it's going to be demolished. So it was the beginning of the coalition.
Right.
And that coalition that, like you said, it began in 2019, I believe, also called Friends of Sheepford Rd Bridge. Who is it made up of?
So I started it along with one of my neighbors, Joan Linker, and we just reached out to members in the community and formed like a core group of people who were then willing to go out and do what the next steps were. And the first time was I sent out basically a snail mail to all the people who lived on Sheepford Rd Bridge and got them to show up at a meeting. and that's where we started from. And as we grew and as people started to see we were serious and we weren't going to give up, then we attracted more and more people. And the coalition, like I said, eventually, contained also our elected officials. We had reached out to just about every historical society in the state, local, state, federal bridge organizations, the National Historic Bridge Foundation. I mean, we really reached out to anyone that we could find, and they all joined us. And I always say that bridge wanted to be saved, just because there were so many times where it looked like all was lost, and then something would happen and bring it back to life.
Yeah.
There were people who said you'll never do this.
You know you're not going to win.
You're not going to win.
Well, when you think about it, these preservation campaigns, it can be long, very emotional, and sometimes uphill battles, like you were discussing, especially like how expensive it is to preserve it. What was it about the community that made everyone feel like this bridge was worth saving?
It's part of where they live, and so the bridge is also connected to Lower Island Township's Yellow Breeches Park, and that is a canoe, kayak, take in and take out area. So a lot of people come down there. A lot of people in the neighborhood walk there just to the bridge and turn around. It's like a destination bridge. And it captured their hearts to think that it wouldn't be there anymore.
And of course, now it's going to be a pedestrian and bicycle bridge, which will open up additional recreational facility.
With the historical marker, too.
Yes. Yes. We have that historical marker right now on the wall of our office in the Historical Society, but we definitely look forward to the day that we can attach it to the bridge.
And Janice, you also merged the Friends group with the Historical Society, as you were just discussing, and you became the executive director. How did that change help? How did that move this project?
It gave me the backing, really, that we needed to move forward. I had joined, I was asked to join the board in February of 2021, and I started to do a lot of work with the board and the society. And within a few months, they asked me to be the executive director. They said, you're doing all the work anyway, you might as well have the title. And having that title makes a big difference when you're reaching out to people. You're not just, not that community people aren't important, but having a group behind you really helps.
I might also add that Janice has become, since I asked her to join as its executive director, never imagining that she would become almost a full-time, unpaid, volunteer executive director, and which our society has gained substantially, and she's become much more active with the Cumberland County Historical Society, of which I'm a trustee, and she's going to be becoming a trustee. So there's just been a inertia of efforts that have come out of this.
And Janice, like Don Paul was just saying, this bridge is going to be restored for pedestrian and bicycle use. And you secured, I believe it was a $1.4 million PennDOT TSA grant for this. What was your reaction when you heard that the grant was approved?
That's very funny because I happened to be in Paris you can't make this stuff up. I was in Paris walking over a bridge, and I got a phone call from a 717 number, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm on vacation. It happened to be Senator Reagan's office letting me know that we had gotten the funding. And I made quite a scene in Paris that day. And the first thing we did was go and buy a bottle of champagne.
I'm sure you did. First of all, this bridge has connections to the Eiffel Tower, apparently, and you happen to be walking across a bridge in Paris. You don't think that's fate?
That's what I said. This bridge wanted to be saved. There's been so many things like that have happened along the way. So great moment.
You can't make that up.
You can't make that up.
And when I came home from Paris, the West Shore Historical Society was waiting on my front lawn with a big sign that said we did it, and balloons and more champagne, and there was quite a bit of celebrating.
We changed the sign that said save the bridge, and we added a D. It said saved the bridge.
Right, we saved the bridge, yeah.
Restoring a 19th century bridge is no small feat, as you've alluded to throughout this whole conversation. Now that you have the funding for this bridge and you're trying to restore it, do you foresee any challenges as you move forward?
So, fortunately for us, the money was awarded to York County. So York County is the the county is overseeing the grant. It was the project was just awarded to Kinsley Construction outside of York, and they started just 2 weeks ago, clearing the land to bring in the crane that's actually going to lift the bridge off the water and set it down on the property, where it will be taken apart and shipped off site and sandblasted, and every part will be fixed and brought back and then put back over the water. So the day that it comes down from the bridge, from the water, when they're lifting it with the crane, I think I'll be very nervous, hoping that everything goes the way that it's supposed to. And then, the challenge is also, once it gets off site, if they discover that there's more things that need to be replaced than originally thought, are we going to have enough money? Is it going to come back? And of course, we believe it will, but those are things that we worry about.
Janice, I can see you now with that crane. Be careful with that.
Well,
Don't drop my bridge.
I know.
And then when it comes back, our challenges are increased because we have to maintain it, which requires money. We're a nonprofit, so we're going to need people to contribute to the ongoing maintenance, insurance, etc. of the bridge.
Well, Don, Paul, and Janice, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
That was Don Paul Shearer and Janice Lynx of the West Shore Historical Society sharing the story of the Sheepford Rd Bridge, its ties to Pennsylvania innovation, the Eiffel Tower, and its path to preservation. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today on The Spark.